Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time off on such a lovely summer evening to come out to this talk on tools for businesses. This is not really about technology, it's about how you relate and how you build relationships with your customers, whatever your line of business. And I'm going to, hopefully, in the next hour and a bit, give you some inspiration, share with you some tools that are now available, most of them in the free in the public domain. Some you might pay a modest amount for. I want to give you a little bit of history, very quickly, the last 20 years if you like, of how the web has become a multimedia channel. It's moved so fast. I think even Tim Berners-Lee would be staggered at the speed with which the web has entered our lives. So we're going to look at how it's become a platform for the delivery of multimedia. And then I want to ask you a question, which is, what do you think is today, you don't have to answer it now because it'll come up later on, what is today's killer application? What is it that we have to have the web for on a daily, hourly basis, or minute by minute basis if you like? What's become the killer application? Then I want to share with you what I describe as my 5 golden apples, 5 golden online marketing tips. These are things that I've learned from running seminars over the years, learning from other businesses, particularly those businesses who I would describe as the early adopters, the businesses who back in 1997, 98 were with CompuServe and starting to develop very basic websites, but they were realizing that that's where the business and the commerce is going to be going. And now we're at 2013, so they've become very, very successful businesses. And then we're going to review your marketing mix and perhaps review the pie chart and look at what might need to change, whether you need to think about social media, whether you need to start selling online, start selling your fair trade products online. Okay, so let's take 3 decades. This is an anonymous office desk. In the 1970s, there was the big growth and the arrival of the personal computer. This was the IBM 5155, which weighed in at 55 pounds. It was known actually as the world's first portable computer. Has a lovely little 5-inch screen you can see there, and some buttons and a slot for the hard drive. And it cost £12,500 to buy. So in 1975, that was quite a lot of money for a business to invest. It wasn't the small businesses like ourselves, we wouldn't be considering buying into computing power. But computers are on the way. They were out of the air-conditioned cabinets with people managing them with white coats on, and they were actually coming into the workplace and into the world of commerce and industry. Then in the 80s, I'm sure some of you may remember this wonderful house brick of a phone. This is one of the very first hotline car phones in the early 80s, and with that came the growth of the mobile telephony networks, and phones started to shrink in size as well. So we had computing becoming portable in the 70s, phones starting to become portable in the 80s, and of course in the 90s we had the arrival, so Tim Berners-Lee here on the right, of the World Wide Web, which grew out of the research that he did and many others did. It was very much a huge global team effort to develop this extraordinary access into knowledge around the world. So what I want to show you is how these 3 technologies have actually shifted the marketplace, the technology marketplace, how we communicate, how we sell and buy online. And what I want to show you is what I describe as the evolution of the web as a multimedia channel. So on the bottom here we've got the timeline from 94 up to this year, 2013. And below that you can see these are the number of people online. I think the last sort of online census that I've got figures for was about 2006. So it's about 1 billion people online then. So you can see the ramping up of people going online to use the web. So the first wave in the early 90s was the information wave. So Tim Berners-Lee had invented this extraordinary sort of doorway into all this knowledge. How did you find out? What did you use? Use the search engine. These wonderful things called search engines arrived. So, and then we had Hotbot and AltaVista and Reed and Yahoo and Ask Jeeves. I'm sure some of you may remember those search engines from your early days of browsing the web. Now, if you look at the Google server rooms now, they're huge. They are, they've got data centers all around the planet, network data centers. And if you imagine that when you type in a search inquiry into Google, it consumes enough power to power a 100-watt bulb for 17 seconds. Now that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but if you multiply that by the 4.7 billion searches that Google copes with every day, that is a lot of power that Google consumes. And it now consumes, as a corporation, it now consumes 1% of the electrical output of America. So it's starting to become, it's starting to use a lot of power to service all our inquiries about where is tonight's workshop, which is what I was typing into my phone because I hadn't got the address. So all that is done through server farms like that. The next wave is where we start to do business is from 98 onwards. So we started to trade online through eBay. We started to buy our products online through websites like Amazon. We started to look at travel with Expedia, one of the early travel websites. And then as broadband started to roll out and we had this additional bandwidth, we started to talk. How many of you, hands up, have you ever used Skype or voice over internet protocol, voice over IP as it's called? It's free. You just ensure the other person at the other end has got a Skype. And I've talked to people around the world on Skype, and it's amazing how clear it is as a communications channel. And then the third wave is what I describe as a self-publishing wave. This is from sort of 2005-06 onwards, and we see the growth of all these social media websites. So you have YouTube. YouTube is a very good example of the speed with which we are now publishing online. And then you've got websites like Vimeo, which is another video hosting channel. And then you've got blogging sites like LiveJournal and WordPress. You've still got MySpace, although it's been usurped by Facebook, but you've still got these wonderful social media chat rooms as well. There's a wonderful website for artists called DeviantArt, which sounds a bit mysterious, but actually some wonderful collections of photographs and crafts and everything else. LinkedIn has become the main professional directory for people to connect. You've got Twitter for sort of instant chat, and Pinterest, which is like a sort of pin board, and Ning, which is setting up social media sites. So you've got this growth, which I find the most exciting bit of all. I mean, we knew the trade was going to come along, but this is where I think we're going to be spending our seminar looking at this section, the tools here, most of which are free or a very nominal charge that you can use to develop your business and attract new customers to your offers. To me, they're all tools that we can use in our day-to-day business work, and we find out which we may have some customers who prefer to use drills, and some customers prefer to use pen knives or hammers. But we need to find out where our customer base is, and then we can buy a hammer or buy a drill or buy a Swiss Army penknife and connect with them through these social media channels. I sign up to email newsletters. If your business has got an email newsletter and I'm interested in what you're offering, I will sign up, I will subscribe, because I know that I can unsubscribe. And I know that if it's something of a subject of interest, and I don't get them every day, but maybe once a quarter or once a month, I'll read them. So I have that way of connecting with you through an email newsletter. And we'll come back to the power of email later on as a tool that you can use in your business. How many of you have been inundated with junk mail or spam? Hands up. Yeah, we do get, so you can put quite fierce filters on now on your email, particularly on your website if you're starting to get junk mail through your website. It amazes me how many emails I get from Indian web developers saying they'd like to put my website at the top of the search engines and it will only cost £500 or something. They're talking to the wrong market. If I'm hiring a professional, a solicitor, a designer or an accountant or a bookkeeper, I will check out to see if they've got a LinkedIn page, a Facebook page, or a company website. Doesn't have to have a company website, but I want to get a sense of who I'm talking to before I commit to having a meeting with them or hiring them. I try to post to forums if I have something to say. If I've had a great meal or stayed in a lovely hotel, I'll always post something positive. I don't like posting negative comments. I'd rather take it out with the person while I'm there. And I do like to post positive feedback when I've received excellent service. I mean, we are becoming very, very conscious of good customer service. And I use eBay and PayPal because it's very secure for small and large purchases. But eBay is a brand I trust because I know I've got security. I can get, there's a dispute resolution service. I know through PayPal it's secure. So as a consumer, I don't walk around garages now. I will buy things online. Please don't try to sell to me over the phone because I'm always too busy. Not that I'm too busy, but I always say to somebody I'm too busy. Please don't send me spam. If I've opted into your email newsletter or we've already communicated, that's great. But don't send out like 10,000 emails. The worst crime you can do is when you're sending out group emails is to put everybody's email address in the carbon copy, the CC field, because then everybody has everybody else's address. And actually you're breaking Data Protection Act when you do that. So if you're sending out a bulk email to people you know, put all their addresses in the blind carbon copy field, BCC field, and then you won't be breaking data protection. I try and research products or services online before I buy them. So I've had to buy a camera for my business. I spent 18 months researching it. So I did all that online. I don't go into camera shops anymore. I don't talk to salesmen. I talk to fellow professionals who are using the kit out in the field, and they can say, these are the great things about it, these are the poor things about it, these are you need to watch out about. I get a much more balanced picture than somebody saying, this is the camera that will solve all your problems. If we had to look into the crystal ball of what's coming, what's around the corner, and the first is you may have seen the arrival on streets near you of the new green box. And this is the BT fibre from the exchange to the box on the side of the wall. So poof, these boxes are filling up with fibre optic cable now. But it means you're going to get faster web connectivity, up to about 40 megabytes download and about 2 or 3 megabytes upload. I'm actually much more interested in the upload speed, like Deb and many other filmmakers are, because we spend hours and hours waiting for our films to be uploaded to Vimeo and YouTube and stuff, because it's an asynchronous signal. It's faster down than it is up, because they had to split it some way, and they realised that most of the market out there would want to be watching stuff rather than sending stuff back up. So it's balanced in that way. The other behavioural change that's happened, or the technology behavioural change, has been the arrival, a huge growth of the smartphone. How many have got a sort of a web-enabled or an email-enabled phone, or most of us have in this room, haven't we? Okay. This is an enormous market now. I mean, the stats are just eye-watering. You know, we will all be unshackled from our desktops and our big computers under the desk, and we'll do most of our business work and our communications work and responding to emails and texts and looking at websites and so on our mobile devices. It could be a tablet, it could be a phone, it could be a smart pad or something, but it's going to be a mobile device. And as the networks, the 3G and other 4G networks ramp up, we will have that access pretty well wherever we are, unless of course there are some places in Somerset which still struggle. So what I'm really trying to say is what we're entering really is the third industrial revolution. It's a revolution of technology and transforming technology in terms of communications, interactivity and commerce as well. One of the interesting stats on this is 1/2 of all local searches are now performed on mobile devices. So, you know, when I was trying to find the way here, I used my phone because I was in the car. Another thing that's interesting about this is that Yell.com, who, as you all know, own Yellow Pages, is currently nursing a £4 billion loss. I don't know whether you've noticed in the last few years that the magically disappearing Yellow Pages getting thinner and thinner and thinner and smaller. I checked my own entry, which is, I get the free entry, like we all do as businesses, and it's less than 1 millimetre high. You actually measure it. You measure it on, with a ruler, and it's tiny. So they're trying to cram it into a smaller and smaller printed catalogue. And because most of us have moved on, how many of us use Yellow Pages on a regular basis? No, we don't. Do we use the web? We use mobile devices. We use laptops and so on. So why is this important? Because this is your next generation of customers. These young people here, as they go through college, university, and they start their own careers, this is how they're going to find your business on these mobile devices. That's why making sure that your website comes up quickly and cleanly and is managed on a small screen is important, because this is how future consumers will find your products or your services. So think about the way your website, test it, type your website address in if you've got one, and look at it on the phone. Can I buy from my business website on a phone? Because that's what these people will be doing as they move into their careers and they start their professional lives and have disposable income. So let's have a look at their behavioural things, which is changing. It's Generation Y, as we call it. They're digitally literate. I'm sure all of us, some of us have got children who are far more literate digitally than we are. What do you think is today's killer app? What do you think is something that we have to have web access for? I'm going to bring up a few well-established brands, and I want you just to call out what you think it is on this screen. Google, okay. Is everybody saying Google? We got no dispute there at all. Okay. Well, believe it or not, the killer app on the web today is still email. It's amazing, isn't it? We think of email as something from the 90s and, you know, we're all texting now. It's still the most popular way of and I'll bring you up some stats to back this up later, of communicating with one another. And particularly as businesses, it's a very powerful communications tool. So don't underestimate the power of email marketing when you're promoting your business to your customers. This is a shoe company in Street. I spoke to the MD about 10 years ago, and he said, my big problem is that my customers are in their 80s and 90s. The web will never work for me. They're never going to go online and buy my shoes. And I said to him, because at that time I worked for Business Link, I said, look, it's not them that we're buying it. It's their sons and daughters who will be looking after mum and dad. Can I get you some nice shoes, mum and dad, or some slippers, or some cozy sheepskin warmers and so on? He was not convinced. In fact, he threw me out. He said, go, please get out. This technology is never going to work. And he's transformed. The whole operation has been transformed. The lovely coda to this story is he's now sold the company. He has a rather luxury flat in Pimlico in London. I asked him, met him a few months ago. I said, what are you doing now? He says, I'm running a business operation developing apps for Apple. So it's a sort of complete Damascene conversion, if you like, from being very resistant to technology to seeing how it can transform people's lives. So, and going back to his story, this is going back to the late 90s. He had a one-page website, and there you can just about see him. He's a catalogue man. He produces about 3 million catalogues a year. Well, he did when he ran his company. And this one web page had 7 spelling mistakes in it. One web page. He hadn't put any energy in. So now he has a much more, it's quite a minimalist site, but there's an enormous amount of technology behind it, driving it. And it's become, before he left the company, if he came in one morning and the company hadn't taken £20,000 overnight on the website, he'd want to know why. So that they had really become a very major player in e-business operations. So I promised you 5 golden tips to consider for your business. I want to start with a picture of somebody who you may or may not know, but if you do know, I'd be delighted. Anybody know who this he does look slightly scary there actually, but anybody know who this character is, this man? No, he's not Steve Jobs. No, the late Steve Jobs. No. Anybody? Any clues?
Not Seth Godin, is it?
No, not Seth. No. Okay, if I bring up his brand, ta-da! This is Jeff Bezos, the Chief Executive Officer of Amazon.com. This is a lovely story, this, because I think there's a real tagline in this which I think everybody can adopt. Jeff Bezos worked as a Wall Street broker in the early 90s, and he saw, as he was doing his his calculations on his computer, he saw this thing called the internet happening, bubbling away in the background, and venture capitalists were being drawn to it like sort of bees to a honeypot, and thinking, oh, I've got to be involved in this. So he left his well-paid job in Wall Street, got in his car, as the Americans do, headed west with his wife to Seattle. And he thought, I want to do something with this thing. I want to be, even if I fail, I want to try. I want to be part of this epoch-changing technology. He went along to a book fair in Chicago in 1995 and did a workshop on book selling. He thought, what can I sell online? I want to use this technology. And he looked at all the products he could sell, and he thought, books are safe, they're square or they're rectangular, they can go into jiffy bags or cardboard wraps, I can get them out quickly, they're cheap to store and so on. So he set up an online bookstore. This is his very first web page called Welcome to Amazon.com Books, 1 million titles consistently. The only graphic he had on his site was this logo here. Because in those days, the mid-90s, we were still dial-up. It was very difficult to get a picture coming down at any reasonable speed. So he made his business very, very text-based. Behind this was an enormous amount of intelligence and creativity, but it looked rather bland as an offering. And he ran his business from this rather modest frontage in Seattle, in downtown Seattle. So he had a website and he had a web fulfillment operation. This is now one of 100 global warehouses that Amazon has created and built. Amazon is obsessively focused on great customer service. Something to be aware of is its great customer service has powered this behemoth, this enormous company, corporation, if you like. The second tip is talked a little bit earlier about your pie charts, and this is your business here. It's the growth of what we describe loosely as social media. We have now got all these tools for keeping in touch with our customers. So we might host a short video on Vimeo, or we might pin some of our pictures that we like on Pinterest, or set up a LinkedIn profile on LinkedIn, for bookkeeping and accounting. Have a business Facebook page. Some of you have already talked about how you're adopting and using social media. The third tip is a personal one for me. It's about what I describe as give something away for free. I don't mean product, I don't mean, a handbag or data or anything, or a holiday. Give some knowledge, put something out on the web that will give people that warm, fuzzy feeling about, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this, because I think it will bring traffic, it'll build goodwill, you'll build good customer relations. So if you're doing cakes, you might want to put your favourite recipes that you've developed onto Pinterest, on a pin board, and share them with potential followers or consumers or customers. If you've got a legal practice, you might want to consider putting up a page about giving people tips about how to write a will and the importance of writing a will. We talked earlier about the killer app, if you like. I just want to share with you some stats about the power of email marketing to drive traffic to your business and build relationships with your customers. And these are a few surprising statistics about email marketing. 82% of smartphone users check and send email with their phone or their tablet. Hands up if you've ever checked or sent email with your phone. Most of us have, haven't we? Yeah, okay. Year on year, there has been a 132% increase in the numbers of emails opened on mobile devices. So we're actually opening emails from our friends or from business associates or whatever. 40% of Britons will check their emails on a mobile once or more a day. Men open 20% more emails on their mobiles, but women click. So they click through to the links. They're not just looking at the email, but if there's a link to a website or to a product or to a new service, they'll click on the link more than men. 90% of smartphone owners access the same email account on their mobile and their desktop. So you may be away from your office or your business, but how many of us access the same email account on our phones? We do, don't we? So we're becoming a mobile community, if you like. And this is a really important one for smaller businesses. Smaller email lists continue to perform better than larger email lists. Don't underestimate the power of email marketing to build relationships with your customers. The fifth one is make it personal. Make your website personal. It always depresses me slightly that businesses, particularly if they're in the people business, like they're not just selling widgets from a warehouse, but they're actually talking to, they're going out on consultancy, they're talking to clients, they're talking to potential prospects or patients or whatever, and they hide behind this sort of veneer of web anonymity. So I've got a couple of years ago, a friend of mine, Peter Weeks, who runs a consultancy up in Bristol, he and I worked for Business Link. He worked in Bristol, I worked in Somerset, and occasionally we'd run workshops together. And after a couple of years, he said, I'm going to leave Business Link, I'm going to set up my own consultancy, and I just want some advice about a website. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, I love going into businesses, I go into the shop floor, I go into the boardroom, I love talking to people and finding out what their problems are and helping to, he's a very adept and successful businessman. So he wanted to run a consultancy. So I said, the first thing you need to do before even you do a website is commission a professional photographer, take some pictures of you. And this is exactly what he did. So he got a photographer to take some pictures of him. So this is what you get on the tin. This is Peter, and I put a lovely quote there on the right-hand side of his website. And then he took the photographer down into, this is the bike shop where he's working with them on improving their sales. And there he is talking to some of the staff there. I think this is a slightly set up shot, but there he is with a traditional pie chart and bar graph and so on. So people have they can see who they're going to be hiring. They actually can make a connection with him on this very sort of anonymous platform called the web. But don't underestimate the importance of personalizing your site. So if you're in the people business, and most of us are, let's put our pictures up on our websites. There's nothing, it just helps build that relationship. It may break the ice. And we say, well, I can actually imagine this guy helping us because he looks warm and friendly and he obviously knows what he's doing. It's finding the right tools for your business. You may want to, create a website or update your existing one. You may want to explore the potential of social media for your business. And it may be LinkedIn is your channel, it may be Twitter. I use Twitter a lot. I don't tweet a lot, but I pick up very interesting links to websites or to creative thinkers that that I've got an interest in, and it's just a tiny little link, and it saves me having to trawl through the web. So there are people I follow on Twitter who are what was your wonderful phrase, Debs? Thought leaders. I love that. Yeah. So, but consider the power of email marketing. Start building your lists if you haven't already got one. But make sure it's permission based. Don't spam people because the data protection regulations are getting increasingly fierce about that, quite rightly in my estimation. You can add new content to your website with images or YouTube clips. Now Tom is filming on a Sony Z1. What staggered me about this little tiny phone, which is an Apple phone, is it's got a video camera in, a high definition video camera, and for £2.49 I've uploaded some editing software. So I can now make very simple films. And when I've made the film, it says, do you want to upload this to YouTube, or do you want to upload it to Vimeo or your website? And I can all do it through one device. So it's extraordinary. Most of us have got these smartphones. We've got the tools to add content, either with still images onto Flickr, or we can actually add YouTube clips. And YouTube, as you know, has now been purchased by Google, and so your YouTube video will become part of the Google database. So people will find your business maybe through a YouTube clip or a photograph rather than coming to your website first. Don't underestimate the importance of personalizing your website. Think about adding some personal content, or like the Philadelphia copier man, give some stuff away for free, give some information. Check your website or your web page is viewable on a smartphone. You saw the stats earlier on of those people who are the growing generation, and ourselves of course, who are accessing web material and content through a screen this size, or maybe a tablet that's slightly bigger, or an iPad. You know, what can you give away for free? How can you make someone's day? And as I said, the client I've been doing some business with in Glastonbury has had a huge response to offering to give twice a year two £100 vouchers. And people are offering email addresses, and she's got now about 3,000 active email customers that she mails to through a mail server. And sign up for an engine room skills course.
I should be in touch.
Thank you all very much for staying. Thank you. Thank you.